It's the last edition of Business Morning for the week. Thank you for joining us. I'm Chimeze Obi Iwagu. We begin with our updates on the global oil market as U.S. crude oil price rises over $1 this morning, extending steep gains from the previous session after U.S. President Donald Trump hinted he may intervene in the price war between Saudi Arabia and Russia at an appropriate time. Our prices were also supported by United States plans to buy oil for its emergency stockpile, while regulators in the country's largest oil-producing state, Texas, were reportedly considering curtailing production. The more active West Texas Intermediate crude futures contract for May was up $1.01 at $26.92 a barrel early this morning. U.S. crude futures for April rose 92 cents to $26.14 a barrel. The front-month April contract, which spiked 24% on Thursday, expires later on Friday. Brent crude futures climbed 57 cents to $29.04 per barrel. Brent rose 14.4% on Thursday in its biggest one-day gain since September. U.S. crude and Brent have both collapsed about 40% in the last 2 weeks since talks between the Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries and its allies, including Russia, broke down, which led Saudi Arabia to ramp up supply. And ratings agency Moody's says Nigeria's regulatory forbearance to mitigate coronavirus effects is credit negative for banks. The agency says although the measures will support the economy, but they will mask the true effect of deteriorating asset quality in the wake of the coronavirus outbreak. The measures, according to the agency, will also reduce the transparency of banks' asset quality if they remain in place for a prolonged period. The Central Bank of Nigeria had announced policy measures to mitigate the effect of the coronavirus pandemic on Nigeria's economy. The measures include restructuring loan tenures and terms for businesses and households most affected by the pandemic, particularly borrowers in the oil and gas, agriculture and manufacturing sectors. Moody's expect most Nigerian corporate borrowers' credit metrics to weaken as a result of the coronavirus pandemic and the current depressed oil price. And here is what the ratings agency has to say on impact of the coronavirus on African banks. It says the coronavirus pandemic and the sharp oil price drop have already led to portfolio outflows from emerging markets, including Africa, and will exacerbate the slowdown in economic growth at a time when government debt levels have increased to over 50% to GDP on average across the continent. It maintains that in such an environment, banks' financial performance, asset quality, profitability, and foreign currency liquidity will likely suffer. Banks, specifically in oil exporting countries, due to their heavy exposure to the oil and gas sector, primarily Nigeria, will face renewed asset quality pressures. Partly dollarized banking system like Angola, DRC, Nigeria will also be faced with renewed foreign currency liquidity pressures if the portfolio outflows persist. Despite these challenges, Moody's says its baseline scenario assumes a significant global disruption, but not an extensive and prolonged slump. And with this in mind, the rating agency believes several African banking sectors can navigate through this crisis without jeopardizing financial stability. All right, Nigeria's aviation industry stands a chance of losing over 160 billion naira in revenue and 22,200 jobs from the disruption to airline travel due to the continued spread of coronavirus. IATA, in its latest sector report, says the country would also lose approximately 2.2 million passengers. The association, an umbrella body for 290 airlines globally, had in early March projected 853,000 losses in passenger volumes and $170 million loss in base revenue in Nigeria if the spread of COVID-19 continued. In its country-specific loss analysis, the IATA says since the end of January, thousands of passenger flights have been cancelled in Africa. It added that the cancellation would increase exponentially. With the implementation of additional measures in different countries, according to IATA's data, international bookings in Africa are down roughly 20% in March and April. Domestic bookings have fallen by about 15% in March and 25% in April. African Airlines had lost $4.4 billion in revenue as of March 11, 2020. Ticket refunds have increased by 75% in 2020 compared to the same period in 2019. I'm now being joined by the PRO Aviation Roundtable and the Head Research and Corporate Travel Zenith Consult and Travel, Olumide Ohunayo. Thank you very much for joining us, Mr. Ohunayo.
Thank you. Good morning.
Now, could you paint a picture of what the Nigerian aviation industry is like now with this COVID-19 pandemic?
Well, the Nigerian aviation industry cannot be immune from the rest of the world. We are part of the global space, and we are also a victim, and we are also losing money in the industry. And like you said in your report, which is from IATA, I think we should add about 20% to each of those figures, because the IATA report is for IATA registered airlines. When you add our other airlines that are not IATA registered, add the commercial, the private jet operators, cargo, and when you put all those together, you see that the figure will continue to rise. And about 2 weeks ago, we were down to about 60% in passengers, passengers that have stopped boarding flights. Now, with the new order from the government, we have moved close to about 75% now, and it's grim. So we just have to find a way to manage ourselves, and while we also look forward to the government to partake in resuscitating the industry, taking in mind the importance of aviation to the economy and to the world in general. Because if you all can remember that ICAO was first formed before the United Nations. That shows the importance of aviation, and I think we should also look at that while we're trying to rebuild our country.
Now, who are taking the hits the most? The airlines or the travel agencies?
Of course, it's the airlines, but in this case, you see, this is the worst scenario for the industry. This is worse than the SARS, worse than the 9/11, even the global financial crisis we had in the past. We have not seen anything like this COVID-19. So the heat is coming to the airline, but the airline is not alone. It's the industry in totality. The figure you heard is not from the airlines alone. It has to do with all the allied services. They are all part of the industry. And when we were working at solutions must also incorporate the allied service providers in getting everybody back on the feet.
Now, Arik Air and Air Peace have just announced suspension of flights to some African routes. Are we going to hear similar announcement by other airline operators?
Yeah, for now, those are the two Nigerian airlines that are on the West Coast. And I think it's from those two you would hear. Like you just said, Arik has suspended some of the West Coast route. Air Peace has done that with Senegal and Dakar. They have limited operations into Accra, and they will be stopping the charter flight sometime this week. This is due to the poor passenger demand, and they cannot continue to fly those flights. Again, also for the health and safety of their staff. So we expect more, and even on the domestic run, you expect some with the closure of schools, cancellation of conferences and all meetings, and gatherings of above 50. You expect same on the local routes. The demand for flight has reduced, and you expect all the airlines to cut flight and giving us more issues in the industry.
All right, now we already we're hearing that Enugu, Kano, and Port Harcourt are already shutting down their airports. How much of impact is this, of course, going to affect the local flight travels?
Well, the three airports you just mentioned are for international flights. What the government has done was that all international flights should now land in Lagos and Abuja airports. Not only passenger, cargo, non-scheduled flights. All flights that are coming from outside the country have been asked to proceed into Lagos or Abuja airport. A note was sent out yesterday by the Nigerian Airspace Management Agency, while the Nigerian Civil Aviation Authority has sent the circular to all foreign organizations and airlines operating into Nigeria and those who have affiliation with Nigerian aviation authorities. So it's that order will practically affect international flights, not domestic flights. For domestic flights, yes, you can still fly into those airports. Apart from Enugu is not ready. You know, we are working on Enugu Airport at the moment and will not be ready till about Easter period. But the truth is that even if you open all the airports, when all other sectors of the economy are now being affected, no meetings, no activity, then what use is aviation? Because aviation is supposed to be people that would the vessel to move people to all this activity. But now everything is going aground till we get rid of the COVID-19.
Now, looking at the revenue dip, what are industry think tanks doing to sustain operations?
Well, in this kind of situation, it's not the industry think tanks alone that can sustain operation. The government need to step in. And when you may ask that, how do I expect the government to step in? I expect the government to step in one by it's not like I said, it's not for only the airlines, all players in the industry. So we are looking at the government giving some financial support, if especially some tax waivers. We are looking at rebates in taxes, looking at government waiving some of the charges in the industry. Then also the corporate bonds from the central bank and with government support for some organizations, and I think loan guarantees too are some options open for the government. The government must lead the recovery of the industry, but the stakeholders are always ready to follow.
Well, the central bank on Monday announced an establishment of 50 billion naira credit facility, and part of that will go to the aviation sector to mitigate the effect of this coronavirus. How do you see this helping to mitigate the possible effect of the coronavirus pandemic on the aviation sector? Is this enough from what you have said?
Well, once again, the industry is grateful for the initiative from the central bank, but it's a little drop in the ocean. But we saw that if you look at what other countries are doing and bringing out to support the industry and other aspects of the economy, we need more from the government. We've got it from the central bank. We want to see the commitment from the government in all those areas I have listed earlier on, so that we can get this industry back. Without the aviation industry, you cannot move the economy. You need the aviation industry. Luckily, we don't have a national carrier now, so we will not be looking at government just concentrate on a particular carrier. What we want now is concentrate on the industry in society, the service providers, allied accessory personnel in the industry, organizations. So this is the area what the government look at. You support it, but the initiative must start with the airlines before taking other service providers and the companies within the industry. But it's a total thing we need to get the industry back on its feet. It's not the government's fault, but it will only be the government's fault if they did not come to support the industry, just like the counterpart in other countries have done. That is where the government will now have, when I can say the government has failed us.
You think the operators should actually come up with?
Operators have a body, and then I think their body came out with a statement last week asking the government to reduce the entry to airports, that's Lagos and Abuja. They've asked for support from the government, so it's now left for them to come together and collate whatever they need and push to the government. The government will not just sit down and say, come, let me give you this. We must be able to push from outside to that. These are the losses and these are the areas we need support. And like the area I've just mentioned, I've just listed the 5 areas. I think those are the areas that the AON and other operators should push to the government. But I just hope this time around the AON will go as one body and be able to speak to government rather than continue to have this mumbling that we get once issues like this come up. Because you find out at the end of the day, 1 or 2 people will go behind and say, this is the way we want it, and it will get messed up. In the past, we've had these palliatives, and you find out those who are supposed to benefit from the palliatives that don't get it, and those that get it and walk away from the industry.
Now, the federal government announced a cut of petrol prices. I expect the cost of aviation fuel to drop as well. Considering the trend in the global oil market, this should be a positive outcome of the current situation. What do you think?
Well, you took that word out of my mouth. I said this on a forum 2 days ago that now that we heard one from the for the petrol. We're waiting for the aviation fuel. But like someone said, they said they've not announced for kerosene, they've not announced for diesel. Maybe that is why they've not announced the one for aviation fuel. Aviation fuel is a major cost component of commercial aviation operations, and we also need to benefit from what is happening in the international market with the glut and the low price of fuel. So we should have seen something like that. And if the taxes I mentioned earlier, one of those taxes is the aviation fuel tax. I think that also should come in. But like the VAT that was waived up to this moment is over. It's close to a year now. We have not seen anything. I just hope this will not happen. This will not happen to the aviation fuel when the government agreed to cut down the price. But we are waiting for it in the industry, and I think it's longer than due.
Now, do you think that the Nigerian airlines could be needing a bailout at this time, like its peers are clamoring for globally?
The Nigerian airlines are part of the world airlines, and almost all airlines are having issues at the moment, liquidity and lose and bleeding. Like the rest of the airlines in the world. If you look at that report you read, by the end of May this year, we are expecting major airlines to go into liquidation, and Nigeria might not be immune. So we support and look forward to a bailout for the airlines, but using appropriate records and documents from the operators, backed by the other agencies in the industry. We expect that when they want to apply this bailout, the appropriate airlines with books and documents should be priority, and not having it from the back that we used to have in the industry. But sincerely, we look for the bailout. You need to keep the airlines running because without the airlines, then we cannot have movement that will sustain the economy. At the moment, there's no government-owned airline, so it's the private operators that are sustaining the industry, and the government at this time needs to come out and support them, just like their counterparts in other parts of the world.
All right, thank you very much for your time, Olumide Ohunayo. He is the PRO Aviation Roundtable and the Head Research and Corporate Travel, Zenith Consultant Travels. All right, to some company reports now, the management of Zenith General Insurance says it is set to revolutionize the insurance industry in Nigeria through a partnership with MTN Nigeria and Prudential Zenith Life Insurance that will provide mobile insurance services in Nigeria. This partnership is offering customers in Nigeria the ease of buying an insurance policy via a USSD platform on their mobile devices. Let's watch this.
It's another milestone in the insurance industry, and Zenith General Insurance is at the forefront. From the cocktail to the main event signaled by the arrival of the chairman, Zenith Bank PLC, Jim Ovia, regulators, partners and staff of Zenith Bank are here to witness the launch of a new mobile insurance service.
With the advent of the mobile insurance platform, which is our USSD, which gives direct access to insurance protection to millions of Nigerians by simply dialing the USSD code on their phone. Such untold hardship can be easily alleviated by our insurance product.
The initiative seeks to minimize uncertainty from life's big events, as well as deepen financial inclusion in the country.
The fact that three powerful regulatory bodies were able to come together to support this innovation, this brilliant idea. What does it mean? It means that Nigeria is very, very capable of changing the landscape of financial inclusion.
MTN Nigeria says it's glad to be an enabling platform for the delivery of the digital insurance.
This is how an example of how we can make the technology available in terms of leading the innovation and make sure that mobile insurance becoming available in the pocket of every single Nigerian.
By simply dialing the USS code *5966#, MTN customers can now buy third-party motor insurance and personal accidents insurance everywhere they go.